Tomorrow we have here at 7:30 a little prayer seminar. Also, if you can't make it Monday night, also on Tuesday night. Both nights. In case you can't make both, come one, come. If you can't make it at all, pray for me. And I'll be praying for you. And we want to see how to serve God and lay down our lives for Him. And it says, an interesting language, that you should notice a dead dog such as me. This is interesting language of speaking about himself as a dead dog. In the ancient times, the Jewish people looked at the Gentiles as the lowliest creature, a dog. And it's amazing how Mephibosheth took on that language. He almost is saying, I do not even deserve to be in your presence. You're the king. And we may say, God, you give your love and grace to me, but I feel like I'm worthy. I feel like a Gentile. I feel I'm outside your family. I'm a nobody. That's a Mephibosheth spirit. You may think of yourself as being like Mephibosheth. But then the king summoned Ziba. And here we go with the great resilience of David. And he says, I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul. This word, everything, is very significant for us in the New Testament. It says in Romans 8:32, not only do I give you my son, I give you all things freely with my son. I will provide for you. I will hold nothing back. Somebody was hearing this and they hit their head and said, that sounds too good to be true. How can God be that loving? How could David be this loving towards Mephibosheth, who was an enemy? But Romans 5:8 says, when we were sinners, when we were enemies, yet God loved so much, He gave His only begotten Son for us. He died for us. This love, this hesed, this agape, the Greek word Christotes, is an unusual word that is very hard to understand. Kindness, when we deserve harshness, when we deserve punishment and rejection, God says, I will give you everything in return. And He raises up people to represent Him, to give others grace. You become the Davids towards the Mephibosheths. Amen. You are used mightily and blessed of God. Amen. Even you and your household shall be saved, Paul said to the jailer in Acts 16:31. Everything. It's amazing. Goes on, so that you will always eat at my table. It's amazing how God says, I will not hold back anything from you. A little verse in Matthew 18:33 says that you ought also to have had pity for your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you. This is what we ought to do, Jesus said. It's amazing how the oughts of the Bible, we ought to have done weightier things. And Jesus said in Matthew 23:23 to the Pharisees, why did you only give a few herbs in the offering when you should have given the heavier things of justice, faith, and mercy? You are the representatives of God, and you're walking around just lightweights, just, I'll give a little of this, and then I've done my duty. But those sinners out there, I have contempt for them. I will not touch them. And God says, I need somebody who will be those who reach the Mephibosheths, who are longing for a touch, who are reaching out. And yet there is none. Luke 15, the wonderful Good Samaritan helps the man who was in the gutter and changed his life. So your servant will do whatever my Lord the King commands his servant to do, said David. This word, whatever. In the next slide, I think we have this beautiful word, whatever. Your servant will do whatever my Lord the King commands his servant to do. Mephibosheth said, whatever. His servant Ziba said, whatever he wants, I will do it. I will make sure and take care of him. And David went on and said, to Jerusalem he will live, because he will always eat at the king's table. Once again, repeating, not observing his handicap, not observing his past and his sin, but exalting him to a place that he certainly did not deserve. I'd like to imagine having Mephibosheth's answer to all of this. Can you imagine being taken from Gilead, where there was no pastures? You look out, it's just barren. And now you're in Jerusalem, where you're part of the palace life, and you have some form of blessings on every side of you. And you, though you are Mephibosheth, the shame is gone. And you have a new life, and you have a heart, you have missions in your mind. You should be thinking, oh, I'll shrivel up and die because of my past. Now you're thinking, how can I share this wonderful message, the gospel message, grace of God? That's the story of Mephibosheth. A couple of questions we close with. David made promises to Mephibosheth. God makes promises to us. David was sorely mistreated by Saul. He teaches that it's a bad idea to hold a grudge against the heirs or associates of a person who has persecuted you. Don't hold a grudge. Another way to put it would be to say that you allow things to stew in your mind over some past things. David was able to put it away. It takes work. It takes prayer. It takes hard work. I understand. Forgiveness is a miracle. Really. If you're still only halfway there, don't be condemned today. But we'll help. God will help us get through. It's possible. 1 Samuel 20 says that David and Jonathan were covenant friends. And God says, I'll be a covenant friend to you. From 1 Samuel chapter 20. And the vow that they made together, David did not forget, even though Jonathan was long gone. He was killed in the battles. So, showing kindness is a choice. Choose to fulfill commitments you have made. Demonstrate loving kindness no matter how the other person treats you. John 13, verse 1 says, Jesus loved them to the very end. He didn't just go halfway. John 15:13 says, greater love has no man. You want to be part of the greater love, not just the half love. Go all the way. Demonstrate loving kindness no matter how you are treated. This is what we ought to do. And go, if it's at all possible, beyond random acts of kindness. Plan ways to show kindness this week. Follow through on your plans. Maybe even write down something. You have to. Just a suggestion. Also, it is possible that we all do have a Mephibosheth in our life who maybe does not deserve our love. Someone in your life is in need of experiencing the kindness and forgiveness of God. Commit to finding that person. Maybe you've tried and they didn't receive it. Then that's on them. But there might be somebody who is still looking for it. Demonstrate love by your kindness to them. What commitment, I ask you this question, did David remember when he was established in the kingship of Israel? He remembered his commitment to Jonathan. What do we know about David's past that would have been a motivation to him or for him to want to show kindness to Jonathan's descendants? You remember what Jonathan's sin was? That's right. He had a very bad sin. Out of his sin of adultery and murder, he lost his son. And he knew what it was like to be forgiven. Nathan said, you are the man, but God has a plan to forgive you. And which relative of Saul did David learn about from the servant Ziba? And that's the name Mephibosheth. Someone said to me, I was telling them about this, and they said, I'll never remember the name Mephibosheth. It's such a long name. And I don't blame you. So we try to put the question, what was his name? What relative of Saul? And by the way, did you notice that Mephibosheth had a son? So there's 4 generations. And Mephibosheth's son was Micah. And you know what Micah means? Who is like God? Anyone here named Micah? I don't think so. But if you have a friend named Micah, say, hello, who is like God? That's the way we treat each other. Who is like God? That you provide out of all these problems. Then the miracle of grace takes place. So there's a little graph I put here. Resilience determines to show kindness. Even if you want, you can get these slides in your email. I can send them to you. What's convenient, spur of the moment kindness? That's nothing. Do you know that even in the various militaries they have called MBSR? It is called mindfulness-based stress reduction. And they teach the people in the military who have stress syndromes how to actually think about and have MBSR, stress reduction, through mindfulness based strategies. Do you know there's a nerve from the brain to the heart called the Abe nerve? And this nerve is affected by our communication to others. And it has actually been called the one nerve that warms the heart from the brain. And it comes through positive statements. Even they teach people to be kind. And the man was there planning to be kind, but he was having a hard time. He couldn't do it. He was from a military background where he had some bad things happen to him. And he was critical of everybody. And he just looked for things to be nasty about. And he was in the line for the food, and the lady started holding the baby, and the lady said, "Oh, what a beautiful baby!" And he's like, "Listen, oh my God!" And he was one time, and then she had only it says 10 items. You know how you go in that line, and she had like 25 items. And he said, "She's in the line with 25 items, and that's wrong according to what it says in the sign." And she's showing the baby, and they're talking, "Oh, I love your baby, it's so beautiful." And he's just getting red all the way up like this. Finally, she left, and he got up to give the food. And she said, "Thank you for your patience. That was my son. My husband was killed in the battle in Afghanistan. That was my mother. She brings my baby every day. I have to work 12 hours a day. And that's the only time I can see my son." And he said, "I'm glad I didn't say anything." And he tried to be kind after that. There's so much about this teaching of David, the teaching of God. Romans 2, verse 4, do not show contempt for kindness. Do not show contempt for kindness. God's love and grace is here for us. Let's bow for prayer. Worship team, if you would come up. God, thank you so much, oh God, for your kindness to us, your forgiving and loving grace. If there's anyone here today who wants to claim a